Every night, I have this number in my head. It's a number we never say out loud. Now, I want you to think about the number 40. Not 40 hours, although that is a big topic on its own, but 40 years. 40 years is what you trade for money. And what do you get in return? Weekends. Now just imagine that for a moment. 40 years and you get weekends. Most people, they don't question it because, it's the norm. You work 5 days, you have 2 days off. What I see is an uneven balance between work and freedom. You should have at least as much freedom as you have work time. And before you think that I'm being a bit irrational, let me just remind you, we have never worked more days per year than we do today. People worked less 500 years ago, during the plague, during the dark ages. And today we have all this fancy technology, like anything we can wish for, and we still work more than ever. You can't possibly think that this is okay. You just can't. Now, I hadn't seen my grandfather for 2 years when he died. And my father, I'm embarrassed to say that I actually missed 10 years. And I know how that sounds, like I'm making excuses, like I'm blaming work instead of taking responsibility for my own choices. But that's not what I'm doing. I actually take full responsibility for not spending enough time with my grandfather and my dad in their final years. That's on me, no one else, okay? But here's what actually happened. Work sort of changed me into someone who thought that sacrificing personal life was normal, expected, what serious people do. It convinced me that missing family gatherings was the price of being responsible, that being unavailable was what career advancement looked like. Now, they're both gone, and I can't get that time back. It's too late. I can't make up for it. It's one of my biggest regrets in life. And the thing is, I didn't see it happening, Not until it was already over. And that's what I've been thinking about lately. The things we trade without realizing we're trading them. The way careers don't just take your time, they take your ability to see that you're losing something. Now, I'm not sure when it started feeling strange to me, this whole career thing, the reverence of it, the assumption that this is just what you do with your life. Now, I remember being asked as a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? You probably had that question too. Nobody asked me how I wanted to live my life, not what my days might look like, just what job, what title. And I sort of absorbed that completely. And by high school, everything sort of pointed in this one direction. Grades to get into college, college to get a career, and career to somewhere, I guess, success, meaning some kind of arrival. But I don't think anyone told me what it would actually feel when I got there. Nobody said, this might slowly empty you out. This is where most people never question it. Now, when I was at the university, my friends and I used to talk about careers like they were dreams. We imagined offices, glass buildings, and important meetings. We imagined becoming someone respected, accomplished, secure. And I remember sitting in a cafe, maybe 22 years old, talking with my best friend about where we would be in 10 years. And we sort of imagined senior positions and nice apartments and respect in our fields. And we genuinely believed that getting there would feel like winning, like we would arrive somewhere and finally feel complete. Now, I wish I could go back and tell myself something, not harshly, just kind of gently, like you have no idea what this is going to feel like. Oh, and if this kind of thinking resonates with you, I'll be exploring it more in upcoming videos, so don't forget to subscribe. So my first real job after the university, they gave me a phone and a laptop and they showed me to my office. And I remember sitting there for a few minutes. Like at first I was proud, but then it just sort of hit me. Like, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life here. Well, most of it anyway. I mean, I knew I would eventually change jobs, but it was just this feeling like this is what I worked so hard for, to sit in some square room all day, slaving away for some soulless corporation. And that was the first time I felt it, The cage sort of clicked shut. And years later, I was working as a production planner, and the manager of this factory really liked me and promoted me to production manager. Now, he did it in a rather awkward way because he sort of knew I didn't like the job. So what he did was he would have this big meeting with the entire staff, and he told everyone that they should follow either his orders or mine, like I was second in command. And I remember thinking, I didn't ask for this. This guy just assumed that this is what I wanted. I didn't want to tell people what to do. Like, for me, work has always been trading time for money. And now I have to be responsible for other people. Like, not advancements, just responsibility I never really asked for. And this wasn't a factory that, to be honest, it just felt apocalyptic. It was built in something like the 1950s or 60s. It was never renovated. It was filled with scrap parts from older machines that they never threw out because it probably cost too much to throw away. Everything was sort of decaying, falling apart, and the people there were just tired, bored, exhausted. And it spread around like this infection, you know? And one day I locked myself in a room just to have some privacy from people asking me questions. And I started to look around in this old room, and I noticed that there were these documents on the shelf. And I looked at them and I saw that these documents were from the 60s. And it sort of made me more depressed because it really showed me how pointless this work was. Here I was doing the same work that people did 60 years ago in the same building with the same problems. Nothing had changed, nothing ever would. And here's the part that nobody really warns you about. You see, that manager that I talked about, he got fired. Yeah, and I was stuck there alone. Not that I liked him, but at least I could sort of blame him for everything, you know what I mean? And now I was the manager, but it was just temporary until they hired a real one. And they fired him for not getting the company the results they wanted. And I remember it was the first time in my career that I called my consulting agency, because I worked as a consultant at the time, and I begged them to get me out of there. But I was stuck there for more than 2 years. So what happened was they actually did find a replacement for me, and I trained this replacement. And after 2 weeks, she sort of looked at me and said, nope, I don't want this. And so I had to stay for another year. And eventually they did pull me out. And I remember on my final day, this is so crazy, on my final day, they gave me a coffee cup, a mug with the company branding. And I remember the moment I left that place, I threw the cup in the closest public garbage can that I could find. Now, looking back at this time, from the outside, it looked like progress, you know, more responsibility, more trust, a step up. But what it actually felt like was heavier, more trapped, less mine. And I think that was the first crack, I think. And I've been noticing something about the people who have, you know, made it. People with titles, with status, the salary everyone dreams about. Corner offices, from the outside, they look very successful. And I've had the same conversation with them over and over again. Usually late at night, usually after a few drinks, when the performance drops and the truth sort of comes out. And they look at me and they say, I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore. Or I can't remember the last time I had dinner with my kids. Or I'm just exhausted all the time. You know, the money never seems worth it to them, not once, because what they've traded isn't visible on a paycheck, I think. You know, it's like time, energy, presence, health, relationships, their best years, their sharpest mind, their healthiest body. Now, one of my oldest friends used to work 60-hour weeks. He would brag about it all the time, honestly, like stock options, advancement, the whole thing. He had made it, you know? Now, I wasn't actually jealous. I just wanted to do my 40 hours and go home to be with my wife. And one day, he came home and his girlfriend was gone. She moved out, no warning. And here's the disturbing part. He just couldn't understand why. And 2 years later, he found someone new. They moved in together. And guess what? The same thing happened. He came home one day and she was gone again. And he had no idea why. And I wanted to tell him the truth, but I just didn't have the heart to tell him, you know? Eventually, he did figure it out on his own, and he's married now. Things are very different. He does not sacrifice his personal life anymore, but those years, those relationships, gone. And this is where the trap tightens. And I wonder if most of us don't even realize what we're giving up. We think it's sort of temporary, that it will ease up eventually, that the next level will bring more time, but it doesn't ease up. And the next level just brings new demands, new reasons you can't slow down just yet. Now, I had this colleague once, and we would talk near the coffee machine, and she absolutely hated her job. She hated her boss. She complained every single day about the company and everything. And also the stress was sort of destroying her. And I remember she complained so much that I was so tired of hearing her complain. I mean, I get it. I hated it too. Hell, I make videos about it. But I don't want to hear it at work every single day. I was stuck there too, you know? And she looked sort of tired. Like, you know, to be completely honest, she looked older than she actually was. And I didn't even suggest anything radical. I just said, why don't you just look for a different job, you know? Maybe less miserable. And she looked at me like I suggested jumping off a cliff. Like, really. She just felt that she couldn't, not practically. But more than that, not mentally, I think. You see, her reason for staying, it wasn't fear of finding a new job. It was the fear of having to learn something new. People fear learning new things. They would rather keep doing things they hate. Now, I don't have any contact with this girl anymore, but I think it's quite possible that she is still there. That's the terrible thing. I think that's what careers do. You know, they don't just take your time, they take your imagination, your ability to picture something different, a different way of living. And you start to believe that, you know, this is just how life works, that everyone goes through this, that enduring 40 years is just what adults do. And questioning it starts to feel naive, childish. Almost nobody sees this part coming. So when I was a kid, I remember that I noticed something peculiar about adults, you know? It was everyone, like my parents, the teachers, everyone. They all just seemed so dull and tired and exhausted. They had no imagination. Even their sense of humor seemed sort of dry. And I didn't understand back then, but I did understand it when I started working, when I started becoming the same dull, exhausted adult myself. Now, last year, I discovered that I have something called aphantasia, and it means that I can't visualize things in my head anymore. Most people can. If you ask someone to imagine a red apple, they actually see it in their head. I can't. Now, what's really disturbing about that is I remember that I had the ability when I was a kid. Like, I remember I used to draw a lot. I would make movies with my dad's camera, play with Lego for hours. And now I'm sort of this analytical, rational type of person. You know, I did the Myers-Briggs test a couple of times, and I am what they call INTJ and work so stripped me of every creative aspect of my life, except making videos on this channel. But I think I sort of lost my imagination, like really, you know? And that acceptance, I think that's where the real damage happens, not the exhaustion, not the stress, but the acceptance. So most people I know live for the weekend. They endure 5 days and they count down the hours, and they trade 40 or 50 hours of their week to enjoy 2 short days. 2 days to recover, to sort of catch up, to remember what it feels like to exist outside of, you know, work mode. And somehow this is just normal. You know, nobody stops to say, wait, most of my life is spent working so I can enjoy a fraction of it? Now, I didn't question it for years. I instead started having panic attacks weekends and evenings. Now, at first, I couldn't understand why. I wasn't at work. I should have been relaxed, but it slowly dawned on me that it was work. It was the internal stress that I had been carrying without noticing it. My inner peace was sort of destroyed. And I tried to comfort myself with anything I could, like with alcohol, but that only made things worse. You know, it was sort of like a spiral, and it was just going down, making me feel worse and worse. And what eventually pulled me out, it wasn't some grand realization. It was actually quiet quitting, which I've made a bunch of videos about. And I know how that sounds, by the way, like a hack for lazy people. But for me, it wasn't that. It was a survival technique, you know? And it probably did save my life before things spiraled completely out of control. And this is the part that disturbed me the most, that, one day at that factory, they handed me a tube to fill, like they wanted a urine sample, because apparently there were some toxic materials in the work we were doing, and there was a slight risk of getting too high levels of that toxic material in your system. And I was so mad. I was so angry because they never told me about this risk when they hired me. The job was poisoning me, and I didn't even know it until they needed proof I wasn't dying yet. Looking back, I just think that school sort of prepared me for this, like, perfectly. You sit down, you follow schedules, you ask permission, and you wait for breaks, you endure boredom, and the structure never really changed. Only the building, It was like we went from classrooms to cubicles, from homework to reports, from teachers to managers. And I remember the first time that I sort of noticed this. I was maybe in my 30s, and I was sitting in this meeting, and I was sort of waiting for my turn to speak, and I had to raise my hand to interject. I had to wait for approval to proceed with my own project. And I thought, this is exactly like grade school. And when everyone around you lives this way, it starts to feel inevitable, Like this is just what life is. But I'm not sure normal means right, There were so many things in history that were considered normal that aren't. And a career might look impressive on paper. It impresses relatives at gatherings, and it gives you answers to awkward questions like, what do you do? Oh, me? I'm just a senior vice president of strategic whatever. And people nod and they look impressed, but what is it really? If you strip away the language, remove the so-called status, if you look at the actual daily experience, for me, it's been doing more than the minimum for things I don't care about, in exchange for status I barely enjoy and money that never feels like enough. It's just more responsibility, more stress, more pressure, and sort of managing other people's problems, meetings about meetings, and sort of crafting these emails with the perfect tone, and waking up with a knot in my stomach on Mondays, and relief when Friday arrives. And here's something I've noticed about exhaustion. It's not just about time, it's about energy. I've already given my best self away to strangers, to problems that I don't care about. And what's left for the people I actually love? Exhaustion, irritability, half presence. Physically there, but mentally I'm elsewhere, still thinking about work, still sort of processing things, still carrying the daily weight of work, I've been that person. And I remember I was at this family dinner once, and my father-in-law looked at me, it was sort of funny, and he was like, where are you? And I sort of snapped out of whatever work thought I had been stuck in, and I actually felt ashamed that I couldn't leave work out of my head, even here, even now when I'm with my family. And after that, I sort of decided, you know what? Never again. No more thinking about work on my free time. And I'm serious about that today. And that's why I went so hard on quiet quitting when I discovered it. It wasn't rebellion, it was a boundary I desperately needed. Now, most people, they never notice when this shift happens. And the company I was sacrificing for, I'd seen enough times to know that they would let me go tomorrow if it made financial sense, without hesitation. I'd watch people who gave everything, years of nights, years of weekends gone in 15 minutes. HR meetings, HR people. You gotta be really careful with the HR people. I'm serious about that, by the way. You can't trust them. So I sort of experienced this myself once. I was only there for a few months, and they expected me to be available after work, basically all the time, 24/7. Like, my life was so empty that I would just accept being available whenever they needed me. and I refused, and they fired me for it. Now, companies aren't designed for loyalty. They can't be. But careers seem to demand it from us. Complete devotion, total commitment, endless availability. There's this myth, I think, that if you just work hard enough, sacrifice enough, prove yourself just enough, you'll be rewarded, appreciated, and secure. But I'm not sure climbing the ladder is actually progress. It might just be a slower form of captivity. Each rung brings new obligations, new expectations, new reasons you can't step away. Now, I remember I was at this strategy meeting once, quarter four projections, and the manager gave this speech like, we did great this year, but we need to do better next year. And I heard this speech before, like 3 or 4 times, different companies, different managers, exactly the same pattern. And I realized it's just words, for effect. A manager can't say, we did so great that you can relax for the next quarter. It's always, we need to grow, we need to improve. Only problem was, it's only the company that will grow, not me, not the workers. And after hearing that speech for about 5 or 6 times, I just stopped listening. And once a boss was doing this performance evaluation with me to see how I was doing, and he told me I did a great job, but then he asked me, are there areas where you want to improve? Now, I couldn't give him an answer. And so he told me to think about it until next week. And so I did, and I thought about it, and I just couldn't figure out why I would need to improve if I'm already doing a good job. Why do I have to improve anything when I'm enough? So when I met him again, I said, you know what, regarding your question, I'm good. I don't need to improve. I am enough. And he sort of accepted it, but he was kind of surprised by the way I responded. And realizing that, it sort of changed something for me. It happened in that meeting, and I realized that none of this is actually my life. This is someone else's life, and I've been living it for years. So I stopped asking how to advance my career, and I started to ask something very different. How do I want my days to feel? Not someday, not in retirement, not after I've made it, now, today, this week. I don't want to feel free only on weekends. I don't want to feel alive only on vacations. I don't want to spend 40 years waiting for life to begin. I want to breathe without dread. I want to wake up without that sinking feeling. And that's what I'm working towards. Not a better career, a better life, maybe. A life where I decide how my time gets used, where effort goes into things that matter to me, where I'm building something instead of just maintaining something. And that's why I've started making things, projects, systems, this channel, for example, creation, things that belong to me. Now, it's not easy, but I love it. Now, I remember I have this memory of being at work, and I was sitting there at my desk, and I was planning a production for next week for the company. And this email came to my personal email, and I had just sold a video clip. It was 10 seconds long, and it was just something ordinary, grass blowing in the wind on a summer day, $50. Now, it wasn't the money, it was that I had made it outside of work with almost no effort, and it felt inspired, It started to make me think that maybe there is a way to make money without having a job. And years later, I built a library of over thousands of stock clips. And this translates into passive income every month. But, that first $50, that's when I realized what creation actually felt like. Not executing someone else's plan, but building something that belonged to me. And working on something of my own forces me to confront reality directly. I make real decisions, I take real responsibility, and I can't hide behind hierarchy. It's mine completely. The wins are mine, the failures are mine, the direction is mine. Now, that, to me, feels like living, not hiding inside a title, not borrowing meaning from a company, not defining myself by what I endure. And, if I'm being honest here, I'm still figuring this whole thing out. I'm still, I'm still working for companies. I still have a consulting career, but it's not my identity anymore. It's not my purpose. It's a funding, it's a temporary. It's a means to an end. And consulting, to me, it's always been this glitch in the matrix, actually. Because as a consultant, I actually never take full responsibility for the work. I have sort of this distance to the work. I'm not working for the company is a client. And I get to leave workplaces every 4 or 5 months. And then there is the standby time between assignments. And because of this glitch, I actually work fewer days than most workers, but I get paid the same, sometimes more. And that reframing changes everything. Now, for me, it started with 1 hour, not 10, not 5, 1 hour a week where I worked on something that belonged to me. Making a video with terrible lighting, mediocre audio, didn't matter. What mattered was ownership. I was making decisions. I was creating instead of executing. And that 1 hour grew, not because I forced it, but because it just felt different. Like my life, it felt like my life instead of someone else's. Now, as always, people around me, friends and family, they didn't understand why it meant so much to me. But I didn't care. I didn't hesitate. I knew I was on the right path, even if nobody else did. Now, the other day, my wife was actually shocked because I told her that I had made something like $2,000 in a couple of weeks from YouTube. And for the first time ever, she understood it. Not because of the amount, but because she had seen me in my studio on weekends, seen me doing this for years. Like I've been doing this for over 10 years, okay? It was sort of like a light switched for her. She understood what this was. It was something I was passionate about. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling. And she said something like, I see now why you believe in this so much. I get it now. And I was so moved by that because I've always sort of been doing all of this on my own, It's always been my personal project. And for the first time, it felt like someone acknowledged something that I believed in. Now, I don't know if this makes any sense to anyone else, but I think the goal isn't to retire early or get rich or achieve some fantasy. I think that the goal is to reach the end and not wonder where it all went. Sort of look back and see days that felt like mine, work that mattered to me, and time spent on things that I chose. That's what I'm aiming for. It's not the title, it's not the salary. A career might give comfort and status, the ability to answer questions at parties with confidence, but it won't give you time back. And time, if you think about it, that's like the only thing that really matters. Not the money, not the status, not approval, time. The hours I'll never recover, the days I will never relive, the years that disappears while I'm busy climbing. Now, I've said this so many times in my videos, but I'm not against work. I'm against wasted life, I guess. And trading 40 years for weekends, I just don't think it's worth it. So I've stopped sort of celebrating the cage, I've stopped aspiring to basically better captivity. Instead, I'm building something that's actually mine. Now, it started small, 1 hour, that's all it took, one thing. Now, I hadn't seen my grandfather for 2 years when he died, and my father, like I said, I missed 10 years and I can't get that back. It's too late, but you know something? I can make sure I don't reach 65 and realize that I've spent 40 more years the same way, waiting, enduring, climbing. Now, like I've said, I don't have all the answers. I'm still working through this, but these are the thoughts I've been sitting with lately. As always, thank you for listening. Do me a favor and tap that like button to show your support. Subscribe if you're interested in more content like this. Until next time, stay hungry, relentless, and strong in your journey of escaping wage slavery. Bye.